Hello and welcome to the Divine in Our Time podcast, where we believe that God has not ceased to be a God of miracles. We hope that by sharing miracles, you can find God's hand in your own life. We're so glad you're here. This is part 2 of the Neil Harris episode. If you missed part 1, it's listed right before this one.
So let me tell you, when you were about, what were you when we moved to California? Were you 6?
I was 5.
All right. Well, at the time we were doing Talent Sprouts, and you had already referred to that. And I had all of these franchises around, and we were providing them with curriculum and materials and training. But we had moved to Southern California to do, we were embarking on what was supposed to be a full-blown national expansion. So we moved to Southern California to accomplish that. But most of our franchisees were still in. We had about 50 of them, but they had still mushroomed out from Montpelier.
Where I grew up in Montpelier, we had one stoplight until I turned like 17, and then they put a second stoplight in. We don't have a McDonald's. So Montpelier is a very tiny farm town in southeastern Idaho. So all these franchisees are very similar, very like farm heavy areas.
Yeah,
So.
and our desire was to try to bring some kind of, like showbiz type musical experience to kids
That wouldn't otherwise get it.
That wouldn't otherwise have it, because they'd have to be in a place like Salt Lake, and they'd also be competing against, they'd be working with groups that are just taking sort of the top of the top. And our goal was to offer this experience to any kid who wanted it and give them an opportunity to be on stage.
So there were no auditions. Anybody could join, and they would sing, and there was choreography. And when you got older, you were singing parts, and then you did 2 concerts a year.
Yeah.
And you'd have like little narrations in between. So it was kind of like a mix between dancing, music, and acting.
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of combining all of the performing arts. So you're right. Most of the communities we were servicing were very much like Montpelier. But while we were in Los Angeles, we still had to continue providing curriculum for the existing franchisees. And it's not like every year the curriculum was different, and it was designed for kids age 4 through 12. They stayed in that whole time. There was an 8-year span, and the goal was to never have them repeat any curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
We hadn't quite finished the 8 years of curriculum. So I had some franchisees up in Idaho and Utah who needed curriculum, and we were still trying to complete it down in Southern California. As we would get it completed, there were a couple of occasions where there was not time to mail them the curriculum before they needed it for their classes. So I drove the curriculum up from Southern California.
This was back in the day, people. Thank goodness for technology.
Yeah.
Brutal.
Because, we had like visual aids, and we had, cassette tapes, and we had video VHS tapes. Anyway, we couldn't make the mail deadline, and so I had to drive these up. So on one of these trips, I did this trip delivering curriculum maybe 3 times, maybe only twice. But on one of these trips, it's like 2 a.m, and I'm crossing through the southern Utah desert at
which is just no man's land at that point in that time.
There is just nobody, and there's nobody on the road.
Yeah.
Just me. And I'm humming along in this car. It's just this loud hum that would put you to sleep. I didn't figure there would be any cops out. So I'm going about 85.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm starting to get tired. And I thought, if I just kind of lay over here on the window. So I laid the left side of my head over on the driver's side window to just kind of rest it. And then I would kind of get awake. I'd sit back up, and pay attention. I'm falling asleep, but I couldn't stop, or I wouldn't. If I stopped for 2 or 3 hours of sleep, I wouldn't get there in time to deliver these things before they needed them for their class. And I started to fall asleep again. So somewhere out in the middle of the southern Utah desert, I'm driving along 85 miles an hour. I've got my head leaned over against the driver's side window, and I fall asleep.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, there's this great big whack on the side of my head.
Mm-hmm.
It literally hurt, and it woke me right up.
I bet it did.
And it's not like I was careening down the road, and it's not like I was heading off to a borrow pit. I was still going straight down the road. But at 85 miles an hour, you don't need to make a very big mistake to make you careen down the road or to make you go off in the borrow pit or to put you into a rollover. Whack on the side of the head woke me up. And I thought, what in the world was that? So I backed up the car and I climbed out of the car. And here in the middle of the road is a dead owl.
Oh, wow.
So I had been going 85 miles an hour one direction. This owl had flown across the road.
Yep.
And collided not just with my car. I mean, he could have been going for a mouse and collided with my front wheel. He could have collided with my door. He could have collided with the window that was behind me. But this owl collided exactly with that window right where my head was.
Wow.
I mean, what are the chances of that? I mean, the timing would have to be so precise. But yeah, I stayed awake the rest of the trip.
Okay, so speaking of precise timing, like that's miraculous, but you've had other instances with animals that were perfect timing that weren't in your favor.
Well, okay, so that was one. So there was another one. So, and this occurred years after we moved back to Montpelier. The business venture didn't go well. It didn't go like we had anticipated. We ended up losing the business, and I had to find a new career.
Yeah.
And the career I chose was piano tuning. I love it. I love the career. It's a great career. Doesn't have as many fun kicks as working with kids, but it has served me well. It's made good money. It's been low stress, but piano tuning requires lots and lots of driving to your clients. There was a point during my piano tuning career where I was putting 4,000 miles a month on my car. So I'm just covering lots and lots of territory. This particular incident happened just outside of Grace, Idaho, and I was on my way to go to Bancroft to tune.
Which is how far away from Grace?
It's probably 30 miles away from Grace.
And these are both in southeastern Idaho.
Yeah.
Both these little cities.
A lot of people are familiar with Lava Hot Springs.
Yep.
Well, there's a main highway that runs between Soda Springs, Idaho, and Lava Hot Springs. But Grace is only 4 miles away from that main highway. If you cross over it, you go another 25 miles to get to Bancroft.
Okay.
Well, it's December 17th. It's cold. Roads are slick. It's 5:30 at night.
Mm-hmm.
It's not where it's dark yet, quite at 5:30.
But it's hard to see. It's that dusk.
That 4-mile stretch between Grace and that main highway is a high migration area for deer. Well, I was going pretty slow in my car. I was driving at the time a little a Pontiac Vibe.
It's like a little mid-size SUV.
Yeah. It's a 4-door hatchback. So I'm driving, and I'm only going about 45 miles an hour. And about 6 or 8 head of deer cross the road right in front of me. And they're going from my right to my left. So they're crossing in front of me into the lane of the oncoming traffic. So I missed these deer. But there's an SUV, like a Suburban, coming the other direction, and they're going 65 miles an hour. They hit 2 of those deer. Mm-hmm. Knocked one of those deer back into my lane. And this deer comes spinning through the air. And I mean,
and that's the last thing you remember.
It is. It knocked this deer up, so it was taller than the hood of my car. So it's not like it was going to hit my bumper and provide me with the benefit of an airbag.
Yeah.
It came spinning through the air. And and I remember, I mean, life, when you're in those moments, it's life slows down to just this crawl.
Really?
And I distinctly remember thinking, oh man, this isn't good. And that's the last thing I remember. Well, until I woke up.
Yes.
I woke up, I could hear some guy saying, it's okay, buddy. It's okay, buddy. You're going to be okay. And I'm thinking, what's he talking about? What am I hearing? I wasn't listening to the radio. It's all right. It's all right. We've got an ambulance on the way. You're going to be okay. Mm-hmm. I could kind of open my eyes, but they felt gritty.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to open them all the way. It felt gritty. And as I looked out, it looked like there was a scrim. Now, I've done a lot of stage theater, a lot of live theater stuff.
What's a scrim?
A scrim is a special kind of curtain that hangs down, and they use it to recreate scenes like that where they want to portray ghosts or
Okay.
haunted figures or something
Okay.
like that. So it gives this eerie, you don't really have a clear picture of what's there. And that's what a scrim is.
Okay.
And it was really, really cold. And I thought, am I in a stage play? I don't remember that line. It's okay, buddy. You're going to be okay. I don't remember that line. I'll bet they've got the back doors open to cool the stage because the lights are so hot on stage. No, the ambulance is on its way. I said, I know that's not in this play. I wonder, I wonder if one of the lights fell and hit somebody.
Uh-huh.
Maybe somebody's hurt on stage.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, just then, the guy who was talking to me, he reached his hand through the driver's side window and he touched my shoulder. And I
Okay.
was immediately conscious and awake. I mean, whoa, whoa. And he says, it's okay, it's okay, you okay, you hit a deer. And I said, no, I didn't hit a deer. He says, yeah, you hit a deer. I says, no, somebody else hit a deer. He says, well, either way, it's sitting on top of your lap. So, you have the braces on either side of your windshield that frame your windshield.
Yeah.
As the deer came spinning through the air, it actually hit the brace on the driver's side. That brace cut the deer in half.
Ew.
Half of the deer came through the windshield and nailed me. And the other half of the deer came through the side window and nailed me.
So it
And
just wrapped right around you.
I was kind of turning to the side when the deer hit me. So as it turned out, the left side of my face was just hamburger, and the right side of my face was completely unscratched. But anyway, this guy says, okay, take it easy, take it easy. We got an ambulance on the way. I'm an EMT. Like I say, 5:30 at night, there were lots of people coming home from Soda Springs, people who work at the hospital in Soda Springs, but they live in Grace. There was a doctor right on the scene. There was a nurse. There were a couple of EMTs. But this guy starts shouting and he says, I can't get the door open. Can't get the door open. Somebody bring the jaws of life. We got to get the jaws of life to get this guy out of here. And so I just reached over and I pulled the handle on the door and I pushed the door open. And he says, oh. And then he tries to get my seatbelt off. And he says, I can't get to the seatbelt. Somebody bring a razor blade. And I just reached down and I pushed the button for the seatbelt. And the seatbelt just came off. He said, quit moving. You might have a broken neck. Well, they put me on a backboard.
Uh-huh.
They almost broke my neck, put me on a backboard. If I had actually had a broken neck. Anyway, so they took me to the hospital. They loaded me in an ambulance. They took me to the hospital. This doctor got in the back of the ambulance. He just left his car on the side of the road, and he's holding up two fingers. How many fingers? What's your name? What date were you born? And so on. And they took me to the hospital in Soda Springs.
Yeah.
They got me to Soda Springs, and they wanted to take off my parka, but my parka was only about a week old. My other falling apart, and I says, they wanted to cut it off. I didn't care if they took it off, but they wanted to cut it off. I said, don't cut it off. Just take it off. Well, we might injure your back. I said, no, just slip it off me. I'm okay. Just take it off. So they took off this parka. I thought I'll save the parka. And then parka disappeared. I mean, they took it someplace, And then they start taking off all my clothes to see if I'm hurt. They cut off my shirt and everything. Anyway, as it turned out, this deer had hit me in the head and it had cut my lip. So it cut down here almost to my chin. So that part of my lip was just flayed, just laying open. And I had glass in my eyes. And once I understood there was glass in my eyes, I didn't blink them or anything. I didn't try to rub them. And they were able to wash all the glass out. My eyes weren't even scratched.
What?
Not even
No.
a scratch on my eyes.
What?
My eyes were full of glass. They didn't even have a scratch on them.
You didn't scratch a cornea at all?
Not at all.
How is that possible?
I don't know, but
you didn't do eye drops or anything after?
No, they just washed out my eyes. I mean, they had something to wash out the eyes, but once they got the glass out, there was no glass there. And my eyes weren't scratched. They weren't hurt. They weren't sore. Nothing.
Oh my gosh.
But
That's wild.
My lip was in bad shape.
Uh-huh.
They were going to have to sew that on. And they're not letting me look in a mirror or anything like that. plastic surgeon was too far away. So this doctor got on the phone with a plastic surgeon from Pocatello. He says, this is the kind of accident we've got. This is what I'm looking at. How should I sew this up? What kind of stitch should I use? And the plastic surgeon says, well, we'll probably have to do plastic surgery later. You've got to leave it loose enough that infection can drain from it and so on. And the plastic surgeon has given this guy some instruction. So he gets ready to sew me up. And the nurse says, doctor, do we need to shave his beard before we sew him up? I've never had a beard. And I said, shave my beard. And I said, I don't have a beard. What had happened is that deer had hit me with so much force that it had implanted the fur from the deer into the pores of my face.
Oh my gosh.
And they got tweezers and they pulled those out. And it hurt about the same way like plucking your eyebrows does.
Huh.
It hurt when they pulled those out of the pores of my skin.
Oh my goodness.
But they pulled all of those out so where he could finally sew me up.
Huh.
And
what were they saying? What was everybody in the ER saying? Were they like,
well,
that you had all this deer hair that was a beard on you?
Well, they said, I mean, as it turned out, I mean, the accident should have been fatal.
Yeah.
Because the police, on the police report afterwards, they says, we don't see this kind of accident very often because that timing is so precise. And, anytime we see an animal that gets knocked through the windshield of another car, the driver
almost always kills them.
Driver is always dead.
Well, didn't you roll like 5 times too?
No, I didn't.
Oh, your car didn't roll a bunch?
So let me kind of come back to some of that stuff because I mean there were more miracles than just the fact that
you survived.
That I survived. But
well, honestly, I think the fact you didn't have any scratches in your eyes is the biggest miracle. That's just wild.
A miracle. They sewed up they pulled out the deer hair, they sewed up my face. As it turned out, I went back to the site of the accident like the next day,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I walked out of the hospital that night. So you asked what the nurses said.
Yeah.
Okay. There were certainly accidents they've seen that were a lot more serious than what mine was.
Yeah.
But mine was the goriest accident they'd ever seen.
Because you had so much deer guts on you.
Head wounds bleeding like crazy because our circulation in our head is so good. So my lip was bleeding like crazy. I had a couple of cuts on my head that were bleeding like crazy. It pulled a bunch of skin off this side of my face. I've got all this scarring on this side of my face. And, because this side of my face, really, it was just hamburger. But the gore was mostly the deer's, but it was all over my lap, all over my clothes, all over everything. And it was filling my car, of course, when I finally got to the junkyard where they had taken my car. But when I went back to the accident site, here's what we discovered. You know how when you break a windshield, it just breaks into all of these zillions of little pieces.
It's tempered glass. So yes. When it breaks like that, you don't get the huge shards that can come down and slice your neck off.
Yeah, so you don't get decapitated. The windshield was hanging by a seam up on the top of the framework, and it was just sitting there blowing in the wind.
What? It didn't. So all that glass in your face was from your side window.
Well, or from the windshield. I mean, the windshield wasn't totally whole. It wasn't like it was in great shape, but most of the windshield was just hanging there, dangling there, blowing in the breeze. It was all crackled. It looked like a scrim.
Oh, that's hilarious.
That's why when I started to open my eyes, I thought, am I in some play? This is a scrim.
That's funny.
And it was so cold because the windows were broke. That happened to be the coldest night of the year that year, when I woke up.
Even with all those nice warm guts on you. So it doesn't quite work like on Star Wars when he cuts the animal open and shoves inside so he can stay warm, right? It doesn't work that good.
Well, I mean, I was warmer when the deer was all over me. As soon as they loaded me in the ambulance, I started to get cold. Like I say, there's a whole series of miracles kind of accompanying this one single thing. I mean, I lived. I didn't injure my eyes. Where the car went off, there's a little airport just outside of Grace. It's an airport that they use for crop dusters so that they can dust all of the potato fields and things that are around Grace. So there's this little runway. Well, I went off right at that runway, and there's these deep borrow pits on both sides of the road from that 4 mile section that I was talking about earlier. All along either side of those 4 miles, there's these deep borrow pits. I mean, they're like 7, 8 feet deep down in. But there's this one little section where there's almost kind of a driveway that drives out into a field. So you
Mm-hmm.
can get out to those, you get out to the crop dusters. So it's just, and it's maybe, that section is maybe only 30 or 40 feet long, that there's this little
Jeez.
driveway that goes across that. Now, not only are there these borrow pits, but that's an area that's known for there's a lot of lava outcroppings. So there's all these lava formations by these borrow pits. If I had gone off the road and if I'd gone off the road and into one of those borrow pits, it would have just put my car into tumble after tumble after tumble. If I'd have hit one of those lava outcroppings, it would have just smashed my car to bits.
What's a lava outcropping?
Like, like lava rock, great
Okay.
big the lava rock where it's like stuck in the ground. It's like this is part of the lava that grew up, through a volcano or whatever, and it hasn't been covered by soil, or the soil has blown away. So now it's just this big chunk of a big lava spike. But I mean, the size of a piano, the size of an organ, the size of a car, just these lava outcroppings through there. If I'd hit any one of those with my car, it would have just completely demolished us. But
So you're driving down an area that's filled with burrow pits and these massive rock formations
yes,
on
and
either side of the road,
right. And the deer hit me and knocked me out.
I'd imagine.
My car went off the road and it drove clear out to that airstrip. It's about 100 yards off the road. My car was clear out to that airstrip, but it went off the road right on that little drive.
Huh.
The only place in the whole 4 mile section that I wouldn't have had to go through a borrow pit or hit a lava outcropping. And my car just skittered out through that field and was just perfect sitting out there, except that the windshield and the side window were broken open and it was full of deer.
Huh. Wow. What other little miracles happened throughout that big miracle?
Mom, they wanted to call Mom. So they called her and she came and picked me up. Well, the car she was driving at the time had leather seats.
Oh, did it smell so bad for you?
So I walked out of the hospital and my clothes are all gone and my coat disappeared.
Yeah.
Like I didn't have my coat.
They threw it away, Dad.
So what they put you in a hospital,
Yes. Dad's trekking out in the coldest night of the year in a little gown with his butt showing.
and I sit down in these leather seats and I just wanted to throw up. The smell of that leather I mean, there were about 4 times driving home. I just went,
Oh, that's brutal.
what was really interesting. Okay. So the last miracle here,
Okay.
2 weeks later, some lady knocks at my door and she says, "Are you Neil Harris?" I says, "Yeah." She says, "Were you involved in an accident?" I go, "Yeah, you can tell because my face was still hamburger." And she says, "Is this your coat?"
She had your coat.
She was the one that did the laundry for the EMTs.
Oh, that's hilarious.
That coat got somehow put in with all the laundry, but she had cleaned it up, got rid of all of the blood stains, and I had my brand new parka back.
Oh, well, there you go.
But she drove to Montpelier to give me my parka.
That was really sweet of her. Oh, I love it. That's funny, Dad. I didn't know a lot of that. Obviously, I knew you took a deer to the face, but that's about the extent. So,
Yeah, so it was just one of those kinds of things where I don't know, like I said, just a whole series of little miracles all formed in one. But I walked out of the hospital at night. I did do some ligament damage. The whole left side of my body from my neck down to my hips was really tight for a year. I had to keep massaging it and things like that. But eventually that healed. There was no scarring from that because I kept massaging out the scars. So within a year, I was as normal as I could be.
and you did go to the plastic surgeon to get your lip fixed. Did you eventually go? So you just kept what the guy did in the ER?
Yeah, I mean, it was looked at. It was determined that the guy in the ER did a good enough job that it didn't need any.
Yeah.
And even now, I mean, I don't know if people just are nice to me to say, "Oh, why have you got a scar on your lip?" If they actually notice it and they're just
No.
nice.
You don't notice any of your scars. The scars over by your ear too. You don't even notice those. They're really light. You scar really nicely. It's not like it went keloidy or
Yeah.
it looks
I,
great.
I think this scar kind of happened in part of your mouth that kind of has some natural kind of crease.
Wrinkle.
Yeah, to it anyway.
Mhm.
Because I mean, when I point it out to people, I say, "Oh, I didn't even see that."
Yeah. No,
I,
they really don't. I don't think anybody's being nice to you. I think it's genuine. You really can't see them.
so there again, there a lot of kind of miracle-ish kinds of things.
No, 100%. Oh, I love it. One last question. Well, maybe not a last question. How often do you find yourself reflecting on those miracles? Those and other ones. I know you've had other ones too that are very like similar in nature where it's, you could have been hurt. Like I'm sure you've had other things, but how often do you reflect on these ones or just your miracles in your life in general?
The particular miracles that I'm reflecting on right now all had an element of danger to them.
Mm-hmm.
Life-threatening, limb-threatening kinds of things. I think about the oil rig experience saving my hands every time I sit down at the piano.
Do you really?
Every time.
Huh.
Not necessarily when I'm sitting down to tune,
Yeah.
but if I'm sitting down to like seriously play, you
Oh, and
know,
my dad is such a good pianist. My mom's really good. So again, my dad's a perfectionist and my mom's not. And that's not to say that she doesn't do things very well. It's just like when you do music, my dad will play everything and all the notes are just perfect and all the rests are just perfect and everything's just as written. And my mom will add a little if she wants, or she'll take it down an octave or whatever she wants to do. She's very feely when she plays the piano. My dad's very technical. That they're both fabulous pianists. They both do a like beautiful job playing the piano.
She reads music like crazy, but she also plays by ear, so
Yep.
she can just add and subtract and
Mm-hmm. If my mom's accompanying you for a song for a competition or for a church meeting or whatever, she can compose like, oh, that's too high. Let's go down half an octave, and she'll just okay, and she does it. Like mom's fabulous. Obviously, she's ridiculously talented. You both are, but so that was just a little side note.
But the thing is, every time I sit down to seriously play the piano, I think about my fingers and I think about that rig experience. Mm-hmm. And I look at my hands and I just kind of go, but for his grace, I do. I think about the deer accident every time I drive through Grace.
Yeah. Okay. So you reflect on these things a lot. How has that helped you as far as trusting in the Lord with other things that have come up? I mean, you just had your heart issues that you got taken care of. You just had an ablation and that looks great. But going into that, you had cancer a few years ago, a couple times. You had melanoma and then you had throat cancer and then you had melanoma. I mean, things are pretty good for you. Like for how old you are, you're ridiculously healthy. So there's a lot of things that maybe, I don't know. I mean, do you feel like what challenges in your life are there challenges in your life that you look back at these and you're like, okay, well, God's got me because I know he does, because history says, like, how has that improved your relationship or your trust in Heavenly Father?
Well,
or is it not, or is it just a gratitude thing for you?
No, I know. I'm not sure I can sit here and say, I think we probably all have a special mission. And some people's mission might be, I don't know about more special, but maybe more impactful to a greater number of people. But there is no doubt in my mind that there's some really significant special mission I'm supposed to do. And I don't know if I'm doing that. I don't know if it's being accomplished and it just hasn't finished yet. I don't know if my special mission is just being a dad and someday that's going to run out. I don't know if it's that I'm going to write some spectacular symphony. I mean, I do a lot of composition and I know, I mean, I could relate miracles about how I've been led in writing music, and how I've been directed and things that, I mean, there's no question except that the Spirit was leading where those notes went. I maybe knew the rules of theory as to, okay, well, we can't have parallel octaves here. We can't have parallel fifths. I mean, all of the little significant.
Yeah, parallel octaves are no good.
Yeah, for sure. So maybe I knew those rules, but the creativity I know did not come from me. So there's I don't know what my special mission is. I just know it's not done yet. or I would be dead.
Yeah.
I mean, when I had throat cancer, it was still stage 1. It was squamous cell carcinoma, which is a relatively manageable kind of cancer. It's so much easier than so many other kinds, has a high cure rate. It was in the right place. It was because if this cancer had been like, it was right on my vocal cord. It made it easy to diagnose early because you don't have to have
Which is
much.
also why he sounds like he's sick. He's not sick. This is just how he talks now.
Yeah,
He's
because
kind of got a little bit of a scratchier voice.
the radiation, not the cancer as much as the radiation, but the radiation did damage.
But the cancer was on the vocal cord.
But it was right on the vocal cord. And you don't have to have a lot go wrong with your vocal cord before you start to get hoarse or it doesn't function right. I didn't have a sore throat. I was just hoarse all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But if that little tumor had been like in my tonsils,
mm-hmm.
the ENT guy that removed the tumor said, if that had been done in your tonsils, that tumor would have been 200 times bigger before you would have ever even known anything was going on. And at that point, we would have just said, we'll keep you comfortable.
Yep.
We had another guy in our community that had throat cancer at the same time as I did. His was down in his throat, in his tonsils. And it was 200 times bigger than mine before they discovered it. And he lasted 3 months.
Oh.
So it was the right time. It was the right location to be easily discoverable. It was the AFib I've gone through. I mean, I know that's a heart ablation it's a standard thing today. I mean, it's, as I kind of thought about this whole presentation, Brett, I thought a lot about there's things that we encounter every day in and day out and because they're day in and day out, we really take them for granted. But there are things that are just so miraculous.
Mm-hmm.
So miraculous. I mean, like I say, I know an ablation is like low risk, it's routine. But to me, I was wheeled into that operating room. I was just blown away with all the miracles, the machinery, the efficiency of the technicians, the doctors, the competence. I just thought these are miracles, and we don't even regard them as miracles anymore.
Mm-hmm.
God has given us so many miracles, and we don't even judge them as miracles anymore.
Well, and even when it's more obvious miracles, a lot of people don't judge them as miracles. I mean, even when it's an undeniable, like there's no way, like for example, any of the things that you've said today, oh, well, it's just a coincidence. Oh, luckily, right? Whether it's the throat cancer or the deer or whatever it is, any of those are also judged as not a miracle. And I was talking to Kelly, who was on the show before yours. She's like, if I can't recognize the small things, how am I going to recognize the big things? If I can't be grateful for the small things, how am I going to be grateful for the big things? And I thought that was just so great because it's true. If you don't notice those smaller little miracles that we take for granted, you might miss a bigger miracle. And then who's to say what other miracles you might miss moving forward?
Yeah. Well, you're kind of you've asked some questions about, how do I feel about it? How has it changed me? I go through life with a lot of gratitude for God and for the Savior.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and I've had atonement type miracles in my life as well. I mean, things that are clearly the atonement where I recognize God's grace in my life and forgiving me for stupidity and errors. But I love the Lord. I know He's there. I know the Savior is real. I know He's atoned for my life or for my sins. And I know He's keeping me here. I'm not sure what He's keeping me for. And maybe being in the dark about that is okay, because if I stay in the dark, maybe I'll stay a little longer. Maybe once I figure out
That's what I'm saying. If nothing changes, nothing changes. So just keep doing what you're doing and you'll be around for forever. That works for me.
But there is just no question in my life, in my mind at all, how real God is and how aware He is.
Yeah, how involved
of all of us in little tiny things.
So what about somebody? What would you say, Dad? What advice would you give to somebody who lost their kid to cancer or to a car wreck or fell asleep at the wheel and they were killed, or any of these things that they weren't spared, quote unquote, because I feel like we see death as the end and it's not the end. It's just a transition. What would you say to somebody who hasn't gotten those types of things? Or how do they know that God's aware of them? How do they know that the Lord loves them?
Well, that's a really good question. And, you know, if they haven't had some faith initially, it would be really hard to know.
Yeah. Yeah.
If they don't have a foundation, if they don't have a relationship, they probably wouldn't know. Like I say, for whatever reason, I've been spared. I don't know why I've been spared, but that doesn't necessarily mean I've been more blessed than the person that passed away.
Yeah.
This last weekend, Mom and I went to I Can Only Imagine Part 2, and boy, that was a moving movie. It was.
You saw the first one too, right?
We did see the first one, and for anybody who might be listening to this podcast, if you go see that, you really need the first one as a background. I mean, it'll be, you wouldn't have to, but it will be so much more meaningful if you see the first one. There's a section in here where one of the hymns I've always loved is "It Is Well With My Soul."
That's Brock's favorite.
Well, there's a section in the movie where the guy talks about that song and how that song was written, and then the man who wrote it had lost everything. He was wealthy. He lost everything. He lost his family. They were drowned in a boating accident in a ship that was sunk. And his response to that is, he wrote, "It is well with my soul." And clearly he had a relationship with the Savior, or he could not have written that. And he couldn't have felt that about all of his losses.
Yeah.
So it was very much the Job kind of story.
Yeah.
So what do I say to the person that doesn't live through the car accident? For the person who suffers for months and months and months with cancer? I don't know. I can just say it is well with my soul. I mean, I'm glad I haven't had to do a lot of suffering in my life, but at some point it's likely that I will.
Yeah.
Our family has a predisposition for melanoma. It's possible I could suffer months and months and months with cancer at some point. It's possible I could have a stroke and be, suffer with the humiliation of that for months or years. But I know that I will always be able to look at it and say, it is well with my soul, regardless. And there's another part of that movie where, the main star of the show, what's his name, Millard, the guy who's the head of Mercy Me, the lead singer, who wrote, imagine, he wrote a song the song he wrote for that is called "Even If." He talks about, I know you're able, I know you can, but even if you don't. And they talk to in the movie about an episode from the Old Testament where Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are going to be thrown into the fiery furnace. And they said, well, they said, they're telling them, hey, you're going to be burned. And they said, well, we might be, but God is able to save us. But even if he doesn't, God is able to save us. But if not, he's still God and he knows best. And the plan is his. Well, in their particular case, he was saved. They were saved.
Mm-hmm.
So there's part of that song that's based on that. I know you're able. I know you can save through the fire with your mighty hand. But even if you don't, my hope is you alone. What would I tell people? Just have faith in the Savior. Pray. Like I say, it really makes a difference whether someone has the foundation in the first place. But
and I think anybody can get the foundation. It's if no matter where you are or what you believe, anybody can pray and get that foundation. And it reminds me too of like, peace I give unto you, not as the world giveth, right? Like for us, the peace would come because you would be healed, you would be saved, you would be whatever. It's possible to have peace even if somebody passes away.
Yeah.
There's peace to be had even when he doesn't save, and even when that's contrary to what you would think. How am I ever going to get through this? How could I ever be okay with that or this, and somehow
Well,
like you said, having that foundation makes all the difference too, and having a foundation, and also having a relationship. And again, like if you are going, well, that doesn't happen to me, or that hasn't happened to me, I really think if you're praying and asking God every day, can you please show me where your hand is showing up in my life, you'll get it, and you'll be shocked at how many you have, especially if you start recording those things down and making note and showing the Lord, I'm serious about wanting to see your hand. He's going to go, okay, good. Well, then let's do this, you know?
well, I think frequently about the scriptural passage where Jesus and the apostles, they pass a guy that's lame, and the apostles ask him, who sinned, him or his parents?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And Christ said, neither one, but he's lame so that, my works can be made manifest in him. Mm-hmm. And I think there's so many times where we tend to equate outcomes with how we've lived.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, my life has been relatively easy. I mean, I've escaped some really horrendous things. The horrendous. I don't know why my life has been so easy, but I know it hasn't been because I'm a good person. I don't think I'm horrible, but I'm pretty average. I can look at people all around me who I think are way better people than I am. And I mean, all of my kids, some of you have had trials that I could not have begun to have. You're all better than I was. And it's not because I'm good. And so when people have to suffer with cancer or they get killed in a car accident, they can't say, well, what did he do wrong? Or why wasn't he blessed? It was a different kind of blessing. What life has taught me is that at the time that they occur, most tender mercies don't feel tender, and they don't feel merciful. And it might take years before we figure out it was a tender mercy. But everything the Lord does for us, whether we're taken in a car accident, whether we die from cancer, whether we have a stroke, whether we have heartache over family members who have drifted away, it doesn't matter what the trial is, it's a tender mercy. We just may not recognize it as that right now, but it's a tender mercy. And we grow from it, and we can draw closer to the Lord. And someday on the other side of the veil, we'll get it. And,
do you think the way you react to things decides if it's a tender mercy? Like, do you think it takes including God and having that relationship to make the tender mercy a tender mercy? I think what I'm asking is, it's this idea of like, everything happens for a reason. God made this happen when it's a terrible thing. So is that a tender mercy that this terrible thing happened, or is the tender mercy in that God's grace is there to lift you up? And that's the tender mercy that we live in a fallen world. And I've talked about this before with somebody else, and it's something that I've thought about a lot too, because, you're talking about this guy who lost everything that wrote that song. He lost his family in a drowning. He lost all his wealth. And you said he lost his family. And I'm thinking, she divorced him and left with the kids, but they were all drowned, which is to me even harder, because people have choices and they can choose to leave. Right. And I can't blame God for that or feel slighted by God. I can, but it also, people have their agency, and there's choices, versus somebody who drowns. He loses his whole family in a drowning accident. That's really hard to not look at that and go, God, why do you hate me? Is a tender mercy I guess it's chicken or the egg. Is it a tender mercy, or does it only become a tender mercy when we include the Lord in our healing?
Well, that's a really good question. And when we recognize his hand, it's easier for it to become a tender mercy.
Because he makes beauty from ashes, but sometimes there's just ashes and we need him to make the beauty.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. And it's a really difficult question, because, I mean, we live in a world where I look at things like, okay, how could child trafficking ever be considered a tender mercy to the child?
Yep.
How could that ever be? Yeah. And it might be, once we're on the other side, maybe the Lord could say, yeah, well, this could have been so much worse. Or I was able to bring you home early so that you didn't have to suffer longer. I mean, I don't know. Those are some really difficult questions. But yeah, it definitely can become a tender mercy when we're willing to include the Lord in our lives. But I think there are some tender mercies that even if we don't recognize the Lord's hand in our life, when we get to the other side and look at things in perspective, we're going to go, oh, there again, I still don't know how that would square with some of the horrific things that go on in the world.
Well, it's the scripture, right? All things will work together for your good. And you might not understand any of that until you get to the other side. And then to your point, it's going, oh, that was better. That was a great thing.
Angel Studios has a movie they've put out. It's called Sight. It's about a doctor from China. His name is Ming. And it goes through all of his life. He famous eye surgeon. They use procedures all over the world today that he pioneered.
Okay. He
developed. But it talks about his bringing up and coming up through uprisings and things in China. And
yeah,
it's a hard movie to watch.
Is it?
But boy, it is so fulfilling at the same time. But he was just kind of put on this mission, a little girl from India. Beggars make more money in like Calcutta if they're legitimately blind.
Okay.
So this mother had poured sulfuric acid in her daughter's eyes.
Aww.
Blinded her so that the daughter could make more money.
Aww.
It's been years and years and years developing. So this little girl gets brought to the United States. And this Dr. Ming has now gone from China and he's now living in the United States. But he's this world-renowned eye surgeon. And this little Indian girl gets brought to him to see if there's anything he can do for her eyes. Well, he developed some procedures. He was never actually able to help hers. She was still blind, but the methods he used with her, he was able to use on other people to restore sight to thousands and thousands and thousands of people now across but this little girl was just so grateful. And so she just saw the wonders in life and the wonders of God despite her problems. But I don't know. I mean, boy, you ask a really hard question, Brett, about tender mercies. All I know is that all of my trials have been tender mercies because they brought me to some degree of recognition or appreciation for what the Savior does. But I mean, I can drive between Montpelier and Logan, and I'm driving through Mink Creek, the Mink Creek area, Immigration Canyon and Mink Creek. And for those who are familiar with Immigration Canyon by Salt Lake, this is a different Immigration Canyon over by Bear Lake. But, I will just, it'll take 45 minutes to drive through there sometimes. And I'm just saying a prayer the whole time.
Yeah.
I'll just say, I'll look around, I'll see the beauty, and I'll just say, thank you, God, for this, and thanks for this, and thank you for beautifying and giving variety to the face of the earth.
Yep.
I know that not everybody is in that mode. So I don't know. I'm not sure I'm helping your podcast any.
No, it's great. There's not a right or wrong answer. I'm just asking, like, what have you found and what have you felt through the things that you've gone through in life? And if there's advice for somebody who hasn't had the same experiences or the same outcomes, that's struggling or that doesn't believe, like, what's the solution? And
the people I know who are struggling, who have struggled with suffering with cancer and stuff, but most of the people that I have associations with are the people who they're going through those experiences and they're saying, it's not fun, but it's okay.
Yeah.
It's not what I would choose, but if it's the Lord's will, I can do it. I can bear it. And again, too many times we look at death as the end all to everything, and it's not. It's just a door.
Yep.
It's just a door. We get on the other side of the door. We go, oh, well, that door was really hard to push open. That door caused me a lot of pain to push open. But now that I'm on the other side, oh, I can look back and oh.
Yeah. Well, Dad, I love you.
Love you too.
Thank you so much for coming on, sharing stories. I appreciate your time, Dad.
Hey, love it. Thank you.
Love it. Love you. It was good to talk. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for tuning in to the Divine in Our Time podcast. And if you have a miracle you'd like to share, please email us at thedivineinourtime@gmail.com. And remember, God has not ceased to be a God of miracles. Have a great day.